10 days to build a hospital. There is no other country that can do anything that fast. Like in America, it takes longer than that to get cable installed. I've learned when you order cable in this country, you aren't ordering it for you, you're ordering it for your grandkids. That's what you're doing.
盘点老外谈中国的伟大。
If you see where China was 100 years ago, where China is today, you see how big progress Chinese people, together with their leadership, made in that period. And we cannot forget the fact that we vaccinated most of the people in our country because of the support and help of Chinese state and Chinese company Sinopharm.
Well, I could tell because I was fighting. I mean, they were fighting against us, so I knew they were good soldiers. We were very respectful of the Chinese because they had done an incredibly effective job of defeating American army. No, it was no. It was how we were quite respectful of the Chinese army. They did not seem to fear death.
Ever happen again. And at no point ever should China accept the ways of other people over their own. This is why China has risen in the last 70 years the way it's risen. Peacefully, intact, culturally as solid as a nation has ever been in the history of the world.
I had no idea that this kind of economic miracle of the last 40 years was going to happen. I don't think anyone could have predicted it. But now, we say in our film, when you want to look at the future, you come to China. You don't go to America, you don't go to France, you don't go to Germany, you come to China. And I think that is a great tribute to the Chinese government and the Chinese people, because in a very, very short amount of time, historically, hundreds of millions of people have been brought out of poverty, and China is one of the two superpowers on the earth, and I think that's an extraordinary achievement.
I came to China for the first time in maybe a quarter century ago, so that's the reason my hair is gray by now. And it's just been a sea change. I mean, you think about it now, some of the most modern cities in the world are in China. In the mid-90s, you wouldn't find any modern cities of the world here. The infrastructure that has gone on in China, whether you know it from the moment you land in the airport to the roads, is just extraordinary. The most modern in the world, arguably.
China was, at the beginning of the century, 10% of U.S. GDP. Today, it's 3/4 of the U.S. GDP. So it's quite plausible that China will have a larger GDP. So the perception changes. I used to look down on you. Now I'm having to look you in the eye. I'm looking up. The psychology changes. China wants to be respected as China, not as an honorary member of the West.
When it comes to the influence of China outside its borders, it's quite remarkable that they don't seem to have any military ambitions. Instead of going into Africa with troops, colonially, destroying the country, killing people like the West has done for the last 100 years, what they did was they went to Addis Ababa and they said to the government, we can see you have problems with your infrastructure. We would like to build some new airports, upgrade your railway system, create a telephone system, and rebuild your roads. And we'll do this all for free. No strings attached. We don't want anything from you. And they did.
What is so striking about the Chinese is there's, I think, this deep sense of inner confidence. Despite 200 years where they've not done well, and 100 years, the century of humiliation, they do enjoy this underlying confidence, which I think is makes them very distinctive in the developing world. Whereas for the Chinese, they are able to draw on this extraordinary history, where not one time they, were effervescent, but several periods in Chinese history, the Chinese were a very innovative culture, which always puzzles me why people think, well, they're just copiers. And, you know, I mean, actually, this isn't what Chinese history has been. They've not been copiers. Our own economic transformation and the Industrial Revolution drew very, very heavily from Chinese invention.
我是来自叙利亚大马士革的沙漠。最近我刷到了很多关于杭州亚运会我们国家的队的视频，也收到了很多粉丝朋友们的艾特。看完之后，我是真的很感动。大家都知道，叙利亚是一个被战火摧残、满目疮痍的一个国家，但是我们还是费尽心力来到这里，因为中国这个伟大的国家，在我们被其他的国家排挤的情况下，中国不仅提供了全场包机，还安排了隆重的欢迎仪式。全世界都需要像这样的中国。中国越强大，世界就越响亮。我们来这里不是为了金牌，而是我们想告诉全世界，我们的国家一直在努力。如今中国已经变得如此强大，相信我们叙利亚也会有如此辉煌灿烂的一天。彼时，大马士革的玫瑰会在叙利亚重新绽放。愿世界和平，愿中国这个伟大的国家越来越强大。
I noticed that they were able to build a whole new station in the space of 9 hours by flooding it with thousands of workers. Totally not. I mean, as a hard-pressed commuter who suffers daily on substandard train services, we should be much more imaginative about getting infrastructure in quickly instead of condemning people to being isolated in remote areas.
9 hours they built.
9 hours. Look
like
it up. There is a video here. You've got to watch this thing.
In 1988, China had no motorways at all. And now, 30 years later, it has 84,000 miles of them. That's more than any other country in the world. There ain't no valley low enough to stop them. This bridge, for example, is 34 miles long. And then there's this one, the Douge-Beipan-Jian Bridge. You could fit the London Shard underneath it. Twice over. Telling you, in Britain we're doomed.
The Chinese people are oppressed and they need saving. That is total and utter bullshit. If you walk around this area right here, and then you'll see people dressed up in traditional Chinese clothing, you'll see fun things, people laughing, enjoying life, and to think that you can do it better than they have done it for themselves. Hello. How are you? Yeah. Why would you want to make China more like America? Certainly, Chinese don't want to make America more like China.
China was up to the 1700 the most powerful country in the world, economically and militarily. And then, you know, but you're coming there back. No problem. I was the first time in China in 1995. And I was here back every 2 years, roughly. The changes are astronomical. I think in certain areas they are between the United States and Europe. And in certain areas they will become number one very soon. I think in 10 years, less than 10 years. The biggest producer of solar cells is China, worldwide. And started in Europe. We visited yesterday Hubei, and Hubei, you know, they told us there's 120,000 people, but half of that number is researchers. I started having very good contacts with the United States in the 70s and 80s. Now it's time to have very good contacts with China, because China will be a world leader.